To those immigrants without documents, most of you have been here for years. You have worked hard. You have raised families. You have contributed to this nation. You have earned our respect.
As Catholics, we must stand with everyone, no matter their legal status, and they must be treated with dignity. What is not said, however, is that we also should stand with law enforcement. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I'm dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And this episode is going to be part one of two as we kind of consider what's happening with the ICE raids and can Catholics support it. And the reason why I have to break it up into two parts is because I truly respect what the nuances are. And there are a lot here. And so I want to try to break it down and help people understand, first of all, what exactly is happening and how can Catholics respond. The second part is going to be about how Catholics have responded and if it is actually helpful or hurting the cause and Catholicism. So let's just jump right into part one. But before we do, please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment, as your engagement helps us to overcome algorithms that want to suppress good Catholic content. And as always, your support on patreon.com/The Father Leo Show really does help us out so that we can continue to dish out faith, culture with Catholic commentary. So let's just jump right into it with what ICE is all about and can Catholics support these actions. We'll be very honest with you that the reason why I am even talking about ICE in the first place is because I've engaged in conversations with very well-intentioned people who may not fully understand all of the nuances. And so I will just tell you that I had an email discussion with some people online. They are Catholic. They lean a certain way, and they want to basically put everyone in categories and in boxes. And so they will ask questions like, as a Catholic, you can or cannot support ICE. And it's much more nuanced than that. So what I'd like to do is at least talk about what Cardinal Cupich of the Archdiocese of Chicago said and kind of figure some things out. Then I'm going to give you my take on it. There are several points that I'd like for us to consider, but let's just jump right into it with a statement made by Cardinal Cupich.
Today I speak to you as your shepherd, but also as a fellow pilgrim who shares the pain of many of our immigrant communities. Families are being torn apart. Children are left in fear, and communities are shaken by immigration raids and detentions. These actions wound the soul of our city. Let me be clear. The Church stands with migrants. We stand with a mother who crosses borders to feed her children. We stand with a father who labors in silence to build a better future. We stand with the young person who dreams of safety and a better future. Our parishes and schools will not turn away those who seek comfort, and we will not be silent when dignity is denied. In the enforcement of the law, it is essential that we respect the dignity of every human being. Now, I want to say something directly to those immigrants without documents. Most of you have been here for years. You have worked hard. You have raised families. You have contributed to this nation. You have earned our respect. As the Archbishop of Chicago, I will insist that you be treated with dignity. Americans should not forget that we all come from immigrant families. You are our brothers and sisters. We stand with you. God bless you all.
As the shepherd of the Archdiocese of Chicago, and in many ways an influencer, at least specifically for the pontificate of Pope Francis, and to some degree, being a Chicago native himself, Pope Leo the 14th. And in this, there is nothing we can say negatively about what he says, because everything he says is true. And to be honest with you, common sense. As Catholics, we must stand with everyone, no matter their legal status, and they must be treated with dignity, whether they have papers or not. What is not said, however, is that we also should stand with law enforcement. And why? Because these people are putting their lives on the line. And they are dealing with a lot of unknowns that are problems that they, the law enforcement, or the people in charge, and that includes the current administration. And by the way, this is not political, so relax. I know that there's going to be a lot of people here who are just going to accuse of saying you're racist, you're violent, and you're a Trump supporter. I am neither of those things. I am here as a Catholic priest talking about real tough situations. And in particular, we've seen a ton of videos of people in the streets protesting and perhaps even getting more involved in these ICE raids. And with the rise of social media, it's in our faces all the time. And it's really starting to affect our Catholic community. And they don't know what to do, and they are outraged. And why am I saying that? Because this is the sentiment that I'm getting, and I think particularly of one person. I'm not going to name who this person is, but this person who wants to go back and forth with me, asking me to make a declarative statement that I should stand with the immigrants, which I do, because I am one. But in so doing, saying that I cannot, as a Catholic, stand with law enforcement, whether it be the Immigration and Custom Border Patrol, or for people who are basically acting as immigration officers and detaining people. Yeah, and sometimes in really shocking ways. Let's not overlook the fact that some of what we're seeing is absolutely shocking. But with Cardinal Cupich's message, no one can disagree as a Catholic with what he's saying. What he's not saying is, can we also stand with law enforcement, who again are putting their lives on the line? Do they not also deserve respect and equal treatment and equal dignity? Yes, they are in positions of authority, but they are just doing their job. And what is their job? Well, let's hear it from an ICE officer directly.
Some critics would say that the source of the tension across the country right now on this issue of immigration is due to the aggressive tactics, as they would say, that ICE is employing across the country, and the fact that they believe that your operations have become indiscriminate. How would you address those concerns?
They're not indiscriminate. We focus on targeted arrests. We do our surveillance, all our research on individuals that we go out and arrest. Now, that's not to say that if somebody is with this individual that we're not going to arrest them, because if you're illegally in the country, we're going to arrest you. If we encounter you, if you come across our path, we're going to arrest you if you're here illegally in the country. However, we're not going to target you necessarily unless you have committed a crime.
But you would arrest that person even if that individual does not have a criminal record?
Yes, 100%. If you're here illegally in the United States, we will arrest you.
And even if that person has been here for 40 years?
Yes, yes.
Because as you know, the reason I ask that is because that causes a lot of anguish and anger in many parts of this country, as you know.
So that individual has had 40 years to try to get legal status in one way or another. So if they've been here for 40 years and they're still here and they haven't left and tried to come back in legally, then they're still illegal and we're still going to remove them.
You're effectively saying that anyone who is here illegally is at risk potentially of getting arrested
100%,
and deported.
100%. Anybody here that's illegally in the United States, or anybody that entered the United States legally and has committed a crime that has now made them illegally present in the United States will be arrested.
What about the concern and the criticism that your tactics, your agency's tactics, have become too aggressive?
We use the force necessary to effect an arrest. If people interpret that as being aggressive, so be it. But we are going to make an arrest, and if somebody tries to interfere with that, they too will get arrested. We've seen the tactics with some people using their cars to ram our vehicles. That's use of deadly force. If they're trying to use deadly force on an officer trying to cause grave bodily injury or kill one of our officers or somebody in the public, we are going to defend ourselves, we're going to defend the public, and we are going to use the necessary force to stop that action, up to deadly force.
So there are incredibly valid points that this immigration custom enforcement agent is basically saying. And there is a lot of emotion, which is why the thing that I'm trying to offer to Catholics right now is, please, while our emotions are charged, we must think through this. People's outrage is just outrage. It's anger. But I guess my questions are going to be in the form of many considerations. And so I'm going to list them out for you because I think this can be helpful so it's no longer just an emotional experience. And besides which, there are emotions on both sides of this issue. There are emotions that are running very high on people, say, who do support these particular policies because they are sick and tired of immigrants, illegal immigration, either taking advantage of the system or affecting their lives, and they could be considered racist and prejudiced. So that's one side of the emotional outrage. The people who are all gung-ho about just getting rid of all immigrants whatsoever, illegal immigrants. I don't think there's anyone who is trying to get rid of legal immigrants because, I mean, America still takes the most number of immigrants than any other developed nation. I mean, we are truly a nation of immigrants. I don't think anybody has an issue with that. But the outrage can be on one side and it can be on the other side, which we are going to discuss in a few moments. So what I'm trying to do is put our outrage aside for a moment and try to think through this, critically think through this as a Catholic. Because everything, again, that Cardinal Cupich said, you cannot disagree with it. We must stand with it. But now let's actually talk no longer on a level of platitude, but let's talk about practicality. And let's make sure that, number one, that we get very specific with our language, because the lack of specificity is creating a lot of confusion. We must talk about migrants who are here legally versus not legally, with papers or without papers. And as I've said before, we use the same distinction in Catholic theology and doctrine. We know that there is a validity to every person, yet is there a legality to them? And again, we use the same example. For example, if someone comes to me for a confession and I absolve that person of the sin, but I do not use the proper formula. I kind of make it up and I say, God who loves you and he forgive you and he's always going to be ever gracious to you and God bless you, you're forgiven. That is a valid confession. It's valid. The person is forgiven. But theologically, it is illicit. It's not legal. So we just need to understand that, that when people come to this country, their needs are valid. How they come to this country could be considered legal versus illegal. And why is this key? Because we need documentation. And I know that people are going to say, you need to stand with people even if they're not documented. Well, guess what? I cannot exercise ministry in the church unless I provide documentation. And yes, I could do it. I could go to any place and kind of forge papers and preach and do ministry, and it will be valid. What I would have to say would be authentic Orthodox Catholic teaching. But it would be not permitted, i.e. illegal. And as such, guess what could happen? I will get my faculties as a priest taken away. We've got to make sure that we're using this linguistic distinction, and Catholics are famous for it. The other thing that I heard is, that I did not hear necessarily from Cardinal Cupich, is the encouragement for all people to follow the laws of the land, and making sure our conscience understands this. I think that the reason why this is becoming such a painful issue is because technically there are no new laws that have been created under this administration. There's just been given the permission to enforce the laws. And just like any other situation where people have just become very blasé about following the laws, there have been kind of a permissiveness to break the laws. And then you get someone who actually enforces the laws, it's going to shock people. So what I have not yet heard is for an encouragement by authorities to say, follow the laws, including immigration laws. As you know, I lead a lot of tours, and I'm traveling around the country and to different countries. And I have to follow those laws. I can't just walk into an airport and think that I'm going to get through Border Patrol without presenting documentation. It's just not who we are. And I know that we should have the right to migrate. That is a Catholic position. We have the right to do it. But we do not have a right to break sovereignties, a country's sovereign laws, any issues that create what I would call an entitlement. I'm not entitled to another country's citizenship or access their benefits without going through a process. The third thing that we need to talk about is fostering this culture in the church that needs to take seriously what can we do? What can we do? So when people say we stand even with the undocumented, I find that somewhat empty. What does that mean? If we are not given very practical things on what to do, then these are just words. And we do have practical things that we can do. It's called the corporal works of mercy, sheltering people without homes. And here's another thing too, ready? As I've said this in several videos before, why don't we all pony up, each person who is very outraged, pony up $10,000 and accompany those people through the immigration system with a lawyer. That'll be something that we do. But instead, we expect the government to do it. And therefore, we become complicit in this act of omission, the sinful act of omission. So we're outraged, but yet we do nothing. I mean, you've seen the videos of people going to these pro-immigrant protests that turn sometimes very violent, saying, are you in support of immigrants coming to this country? Yes. Well, I've got one with me. Will you let them into your home? No, I don't have room. You see, there's this kind of lack of practical vision. And I know that the Catholic Church does a lot with advocacy. And I'm very proud of Bishop Pham and Bishop Felipe Pulido, who's a classmate of mine. And they are in San Diego, and they actually accompanied people during their immigration hearing just to show support. And I applaud that effort. But is it still happening? I haven't heard. I really haven't heard. I'm looking for something practical. And I think the most practical thing we can do is, if you're this outraged, welcome them into your home, provide for them, and provide legal assistance with a minimum of $10,000 for a good lawyer. Now, I can say that because my family has done that. My family has done that. So I'm looking at something practical, which I don't always get. The other thing that I would like to caution people about, again, and I'm trying to get people to not base decisions on their emotions, but truly to think things out. To make sure that we know what our outrage is, because oftentimes I don't know if it is well placed. We have to remember that prior to this current administration, several presidents have deported just as many, if not more. For example, President Obama, it was known as the deporter-in-chief. We heard no outrage whatsoever. In part because perhaps those ICE raids, and they did happen. They happened. I was actually in a neighborhood when I saw some of that occur. So they happen. But we don't have the outrage, and here's probably why. Because it wasn't Trump. I think that there is a derangement syndrome when it comes to Trump. He is just hated by a very loud sector of society. The person that I was debating about this issue, I just had to ask him, now, are you saying this because you're outraged about the situation, or you just hate Donald Trump? Because if you do, that's fine. And you're allowed to dislike people. Gosh, I mean, I'm not going to even tell you can't hate them, even though that itself would be a sin. But this has nothing to do with reality if all of our attention is on a man, and our outrage will somehow make us feel better because we think we're harming him. It really does seem that much of this outrage is more political than it is moral, because we don't see the same type of outrage. Let me give you another example of this. All of the Antifa and the pro-Palestinian marches, because of the genocide, where are they when they talk about the genocide for countries in Africa? Literally, the slaughter of Christians in Nigeria. We see no outrage for that, simply because it doesn't fit their narrative of how is it going to hurt Donald Trump. And again, I'm trying not to get political. That's why I'm asking you to think, really think, is your outrage because of this situation? If it is, then do something about it. But if the outrage is motivated simply because people are telling you to be outraged, because let's admit, there has been a nonstop regurgitation of the same issues over and over again with regards to this particular issue. We're taking people away who have lived here for years. And I think the ICE official said it. Well, they just took advantage of the breaking the law. Now there's someone new who's enforcing the law. Now, could there be a more charitable way of doing things? Probably. But guess what? If people are undocumented and we don't know necessarily what evil they have done, then the officers are going to have to take a somewhat aggressive position. We see this time and again, not just with this issue, but if somebody breaks a law, any law, they're going to be confronted. And if it turns any way aggressive, you do see the full force of the law enforcement. And if an injustice was done to us and we call the police against this perpetrator, we're almost happy that that person who tried to victimize me would be dealt with the full force of the law. Well, that's kind of what's happening. Is my heart broken when you see families pulled apart? Yes, I do have a broken heart, but I feel the same way when, say, someone is driving while intoxicated, is put in prison, and they're separated from their families. In fact, I saw a video of something very similar to that. Now, another thing that we've got to consider here is the idea that we have all of the answers. And because we don't. I mean, there are some people who say, just let them stay, leave them alone. I don't know if that's a proper response. I just don't know if that's a proper response. Because while we just want to maybe sweep this under the rug, I use this example. Everybody on both sides of the issue admits that the policy for immigration is broken. As such, we need to do an emergency fix. And the example I used is, if you have a broken arm, your arm is broken, and you're playing a football in a football game, is it smart to keep just playing and pretending that that broken arm isn't there? No. You got to be pulled out of the game, and we've got to fix that arm. In the same way, our immigration system is broken. What we've got to do right now is literally just put a pause and, as all previous administrations have said, enforce the laws of the land. And it does hurt to have to pull yourself away from a game. It does hurt when we see how families, innocent as they may be in one area, they may have not done any major criminal activity, but they did break a law of the land. And it might be considered a misdemeanor, but guess what? There are still repercussions for all of that. So what I think I'd like to offer is this. What can we do? First of all, never pigeonhole anybody to say, aren't you for immigrants? Well, of course I'm for immigrants, but I also know there needs to be distinctions. But I'm also in support of our law enforcement efforts, because if not, then we are going to create a sense of lawlessness. And how do I know that? Well, because there is a real psychological control over us right now that is not taking into account reality. And if we don't make these distinctions, we might be creating a sense of vigilante mentality and trying to say that I'm going to play hero and I'm going to call victimhood when I commit a crime and say, like, enforcement stops me and detains me. You might be a citizen, but you will be arrested, and you could be arrested because you're impeding legal efforts. Now, people are going to say, but it's not legal to just pick people up off the streets. Then become a lawyer or pay for a lawyer to advocate for this. This is an example of what I'm referring to.
I don't give a You're gonna shoot a pregnant woman? Yeah, you're gonna shoot a pregnant woman? Yeah? Stop. No, please. He just put a gun on it.
I was driving down the street and I'm beeping because there's a bunch of ICE agents running after someone. Sorry, I'm really shaking. And some ICE agent came up to my driver's side and he ended up pointing a gun at me. I am pregnant and my son's in the car. Oh, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I don't know why they think that was right, and he just laughed about it and he said that, well, you should get the f out of the way. If that wouldn't have happened, if you got the f out of the way. Like, what, dude?
Okay, so you can see this woman was outraged. She was so outraged, she started to get involved in a chase between an immigration and customs enforcement agent running after someone who was trying to flee from perhaps being detained. Again, we don't know the background of the story. I will never claim to know the background of the story. I just know that there's a woman who was so outraged that she got in the middle of police investigation with her car while she was pregnant and with a child in the seat. She gets in the middle of all of that, and then you see this ICE official coming up, and you do see him point the gun. Now, why would he do that? Well, in their training and in just common sense, how do we know who this person is behind the wheel of that car or that truck? They don't know. Their lives, let's exercise compassion for her. She is outraged, and she wants to go and be a hero and try to stop someone from being detained and possibly deported. But she doesn't know the entire situation. That person could have been somebody who was a violent criminal. She did not know, but she acted in such a way that she became a vigilante. She wants to be a hero. And when she gets involved, repercussions are going to happen. Now let's put ourselves in the situation or in the shoes of the ICE official. They're doing their job. They had a target. They were going for that target. There's the truck careening towards them, blowing their horn. He doesn't know if this is someone in cahoots with the person they're trying to chase, and he doesn't know if he's going to get hit by a car or if the person with the car has a gun. He has no idea. Tensions are high, and in this moment, you're going to ask me, whose side do you take? And be honest with you, I can't. But here's something that I can say. Her outrage led to putting her unborn child, and the child who was in the car in harm's way. That I can say for sure. Again, I don't know the entire situation. But that's why I'm saying we kind of got to let them do their job. Now, this man who texted me, who emailed me, basically he was asking, well, haven't you heard of that one guy who was in California and he was arrested because he was arrested and he was not only a vet, but he was an American citizen. He was an American citizen. What do you think of that? Well, I think that's terrible. That an American citizen and a vet was an unintended casualty, so to speak. It's not a casualty. He lived. He was detained for 3 days, and it was, I'm sure, a terrible situation for him. But in the crossfire, people didn't know who he was. He was showing up to work, and he kind of got in the middle of another ICE raid at a place where there are a lot of, profiled, so to speak, illegal immigrants. And I think he himself is Hispanic, so he would probably fit part of that profile. It's just the reality. In the same way as a Filipino, everyone presumes that I can sing and break dance. And I can. So some stereotypes are kind of true. In this case, it's all about, are we harming people? Are we profiling them? Are we being prejudiced? Are we prejudging them based on their skin color? In this case, I think he was. But to say that you're outraged, I can understand that. But here is the other side of the story, which a lot of people aren't willing to look at. He was released, and now he can sue the federal government. So guess what? Justice will eventually be served. Justice will be served. I'm sorry that he went through the trauma. I really don't like that at all. But the process did play itself out. And I think that's what I'm trying to encourage our Catholics to understand. that we can't just be outraged for the sake of outrage. I gave several reasons why we need to think through this, and let's try to get practical, and let's not try to play hero. And yet, that's not enough for a lot of Catholics. So in part 2, I'm going to kind of share with you my thoughts on what Catholics have done and ask ourselves, is it helpful? So I hope that you do watch part 2, because this is in no way a complete episode without it. But I wanted to at least give some critical thinking to an issue, because again, this man who is emailing me just keeps wanting me to just be so black and white with, yes, I'm with immigrants and therefore I am against this enforcement of the border laws or immigration laws. In Catholic theological practicality, we have to be both and. And it's very difficult because we sometimes feel like a hypocrite. But I talked with a bishop about this situation, and he kind of gave me some good words. And the words that he gave me were something to the effect of, you can feel the pain of this situation. You can feel it. And you do have, in a sense, the permission to hold more than one opinion at the same time. You're allowed to have more than one opinion. So my opinion has to be motivated by clear thought, a properly formed conscience, and looking at this through critical thinking. And yeah, I think my opinion is this for every Catholic. We must stand with our immigrant community. And we must stand with law enforcement who are just trying to do their job. We must pray for the immigrant community, and we must pray for the civil servants who are trying to do their job. We must pray for peace and a fearlessness for immigrants who live in this country, and pray that immigrants who are here without documentation will either self-deport or encourage them not to continue breaking the laws. You see, it's not an easy black or white, yes or no answer. It does take a lot more than a simple answer. So I hope that this helps. And please stick around for part 2. In the meantime, let me know your thoughts. And for those who are Patreon supporters and subscribers, you will have immediate access to part 2 just by going to our online, our Patreon community and accessing that video as well. And as always, thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. And remember, be at peace and stay hungry for God.